It displays the horror of the body and reality with a grim, knowing smirk. Here's the wretched, dirty truth of the world. Here's your naked lunch. Eat it, America. Better than food, man. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Delicious. Back to Brazil. Always a good choice. Today is Naked Lunch by the American author William Stewart Burroughs II, published in 1959. Way overdue. I have no excuse. Where's the time go? Where does the time go, right? Many of you watching the show will already be familiar, maybe very familiar, with the work of William S. Burroughs. Harvard alumni, world traveler, homosexual, beat literary associate, junkie, murderer, genius. Transgressive author extraordinaire, the godfather of punk rock. One of the most famous and revered counterculture icons in American history. Hell of a character. Also one of the most legendary and capable wielders of the sword of dry, cutting, black satirical humor. And, of course, mad as a hatter. As a pioneering psychonaut of his time, I wonder if Burroughs ever tried mercury. As many of you know, hatters used to use mercury in their trade back in the day and eventually went nuts. Hence the phrase, mad as a hatter. Why I haven't reviewed him yet must be a mystery to all just as much as it is to myself. I have no excuse. But this feels like the time to read the book. The landscape of America was batshit back then, and arguably more ludicrous now. The economic and political climate makes something far less than sense. The president is making meme coins, and robots are scheduled to take over shortly. Yeah. It's a time to read Naked Lunch. So I feel this is the right atmosphere in which to enjoy one of the flat-out craziest damn books I have ever read. I first read Naked Lunch years ago in my early 20s, so that was like 15 or 16 years ago now. Ugh. I remembered nothing. Literally nothing. Except that it was insane. I remembered like a tone. That was basically it. Like a vibe, a feeling, an atmosphere. Upon rereading it, it's even more outrageous than my initial impression. The book has been called an anti-novel and is composed, instead of a normal, coherent plot, of what Burroughs has called routines. Like these very strange, eccentric vignettes. The editor's note contained in this edition by the English author Barry Miles and James Grauerholtz, the longtime assistant of William S. Burroughs, was a very helpful source for this review. I highly recommend you read it. Burroughs wrote Naked Lunch primarily while living in a hotel in Tangier, in Morocco, in the 1950s. The book was written over the course of around 9 years. Burroughs was friends with the major beat figures Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg, both of whom helped him put this book together. As the editor's note informs us, the title Naked Lunch was actually given to Burroughs by Jack Kerouac, after he overheard Allen Ginsberg misread a line, Naked Lust, while reading a page typed by Burroughs out loud. According to Burroughs, it means something like the truth of what society is eating laid bare. The Naked Lunch. Burroughs wrote that the title means exactly what the words say. Naked Lunch. A frozen moment when everyone sees what is on the end of every fork. For quite some time, the lunch of William S. Burroughs was probably composed of something derived from Papaver somniferum, that very distinct species of the poppy plant, if you get my drift. Might I strongly suggest you always stay clear of said lunch, and propose a much healthier option by telling you about the sponsor of today's video, Factor. Factor is a meal delivery service that saves time and makes hitting your nutrition goals easy. They provide fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals made with quality ingredients delivered right to your door and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. You can choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie. They also have more than 60 add-ons for every week, like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages to help you stay fueled and feel good all day long. In my world, time management is critical. In order to stay on schedule and stay in shape, I need all the time I can get. The time it takes to cook and prepare food at home and consistently go to the gym is equivalent to a part-time job. Many of you know what I'm talking about. But I need to hit those macronutrient targets and know what I'm eating. Factor helps me cut down on grocery trips, allowing me more time for the important stuff. Reading and working out. More time, more books. So I suggest you give them a shot, and I've got a delicious deal for you. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50BetterThanFood to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. Again, that's code 50BetterThanFood at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And thanks to Factor for sponsoring the show. William S. Burroughs is considered to be one of the greatest experimental authors in American history. Probably one of the greatest American authors, period, depending on who you're asking. I learned from a great documentary called Burroughs the Movie, directed by Howard Brookner, that I've linked to below, that Burroughs originally wanted to go into medicine or espionage, two worlds that highly informed Naked Lunch. He studied English at Harvard and then became addicted to opiates for a long time. I saw in the credits that Jim Jarmusch, the filmmaker, actually worked on that documentary. I thought that was cool. Never has there been a personality quite like that of William S. Burroughs. Few, very few, other writers carried the same mythological weight. Love him or hate him, he was and remains legendary. He was a contradiction. He had a dual persona. On the surface, he seemed like a Harvard-educated, mild-mannered, aloof yet good-humored man who came from a wealthy family. Always dressed in suits, had a lot of class. Had a kind of way of speaking that's extremely imitatable. But there was a very different side of him, a hidden side. The theme of hidden elements, of secrecy, and contradiction seems pervasive when it comes to the work of William S. Burroughs. Underneath the cultivated exterior was an absolute and total madman. Like his cane he'd walk around with when he lived in New York, which upon further inspection housed a sword. I might have got that info from Patti Smith, I can't remember. When one begins to read the fiction of this unassuming gentleman, it quickly dawns on them who they're really dealing with. Though Burroughs was gay, he married a woman named Joan Vollmer, and then, while living with her in Mexico, accidentally shot her in the head, killing her while playing a drunken game of William Tell. Astoundingly, he avoided jail. Nobody knows what really happened, right? We really don't know. His crime, like his addiction, had an enormous effect on him, and afterwards he began writing seriously, going so far to say that if it wasn't for Joan's death, he wouldn't have been a writer. Regarding the plot of Naked Lunch, good luck. It's a caustic, pharmacological, medical, poetical, and philosophical explosion. A nuclear bomb of a novel created by a rogue mad scientist who studied English at Harvard. It follows the strange journey of William Lee, an opiate addict based on Burroughs himself, and his travels, which start off with him escaping from New York after he's getting some unwanted attention from the police, and eventually land him in the demented, vice-ridden city of Interzone, working as an agent for Islam Inc., Islam Incorporated, right? Several fictitious political parties are vying for power in Interzone. Interzone was inspired by the International Zone in Tangier, where Burroughs was living and writing this book. Throughout this journey are stories of the addict experience and anecdotes filled with all kinds of depravity involving a multitude of characters. The character Andrew Keefe is based on the American expat novelist Paul Bowles, a friend of Burroughs and an exceptional writer himself. He wrote a great book that he's probably most well known for called The Sheltering Sky. Naked Lunch is one of the most deranged, disgusting, confusing, bizarre, humorous, and innovative novels in literary history, American or otherwise. It's a giant, sick, vulgar, hilarious joke laced with bitter truths and cynical observations. Just as likely to make you throw up as it is to make you laugh out loud. You might do both. In Naked Lunch, Burroughs assaults the reader in an operatic series of absurdist pastiche vignettes, often in the style of 1950s genre fiction, which is very enjoyable, like parodies of hard-boiled crime fiction, pulp fiction, spy fiction, and science fiction. They're so seemingly random and bewildering, it's impossible to keep your footing save for a few narrative threads carrying you along. But because there are those few narrative threads, they just barely save the book from devolving into complete incoherence, right? A man transforms into a giant black centipede after being de-anxietized. The infamous Dr. Benway performs surgery with a dirty plunger, and then later gives an anecdote about a man whose asshole gained consciousness and subsequently took over his entire body. There's a wonderful Benway moment I'll read to you later. We're given the rundown on the sexually deviant alien creatures that populate Interzone known as mugwumps. Few books are as unhinged, unholy, and deadly articulate in their outrageousness. Think Graham Greene, Kafka, and Jean Genet writing a book together on acid. It's a highly transgressive novel, not for the sensitive. There are hideous, depraved descriptions of drug addiction and physical degradation, medical malpractice, comedic medical malpractice, and extremely graphic pederastic orgies exaggerated to a Sadian degree. Picture just about every type of philia with a spotlight over it. Hell, I think Burroughs might have invented a few new ones. There's a line in the book from this character called the Professor. Professor, coprophilia, gentlemen, might be termed the redundant vice. He's not wrong. I wouldn't at all be surprised if the American Psychological Association were reluctantly grateful to Burroughs for contributing to the DSM. Never mind his scathing attack on psychologists in the book. To be fair, at the time it was more than deserved. After all, this was the era where they tried to shock the gay out of you. As Burroughs tells us in a letter following the novel, included in the edition, shock treatment was a method for getting addicts off opiates at the time as well. Interesting connection, no? Burroughs did not, thankfully, undergo this treatment, but he was curious about the results for those who did. But of course, as provocative as it is, Naked Lunch is satire. It's hysterical. It's meant to be far too much, right? The whole book is an experiment in too muchness. It's a challenge, a test, and a self-aware commentary on the sick joke that is reality. It has nothing to do with morality, but instead everything to do with lunacy. But what it seeks to show is that reality, as far as we think of it, what we normies think of as reality, is lunacy. The lunacy of addiction, of sex, of politics, and the government. of religion, of society, of everything. It displays the horror of the body and reality with a grim, knowing smirk. Here's the wretched, dirty truth of the world. Here's your naked lunch. Eat it, America. It's a big fuck you to American culture at the time. It's a twisted, cynical reaction to a twisted world. Burroughs was, in every sense of the word, a traveler. Naked Lunch is a travel novel, a memoir of journeys to uncharted territories, a voyage to the deep, dark interior of the psyche where very few will have the inclination to venture. Like Yeats, who I just reviewed, he was also interested in the occult and magic. Very interested in magic. Burroughs and the painter Francis Bacon met up in this clip that you can find on YouTube, link below. And within it, Bacon posed this hypothetical question to artists: how are you going to trap reality? Which I interpret as, how do you capture consciousness? Which is what all authors are trying to do. He was speaking in terms of figurative artists, but it applies to writers as well. Naked Lunch is an attempt at capturing a very, very unique state of consciousness. It's partially a spy novel, right? The tone of intelligence gathering pervades the text. Remember the interest in espionage? It's like reports from an agent, like in the book, right? It's a story of hiding, of secrecy, of observation. Burroughs was addicted to illegal drugs and preferred illegal sex. Illegal at the time. Not to mention he was an actual murderer. The thoughts of his mind, he'd likely feel, were illegal. Everything about him was quietly illegal. He was, by every single definition, as many have called him, an outlaw, an outsider, right? A man apart. So to combine these ideas like the cut-up method popularized by Burroughs, Naked Lunch is a depiction of outlaw consciousness. A report back from the front of the war waged in the psyche and in the addict's body. Unapologetically confessional, deliberately contrarian. A portrait of the world as seen within the limbonic state that Burroughs inhabited. Total chaos calmly articulated. What do I mean by limbonic? I mean limbo. Purgatory. Between worlds. Half dead. Halfway between the world of life and the world of death. My wife called heroin a death drug. Not that she's ever done it. But I think Burroughs would agree. It brings you closer to death. But when you're in that twilight existence, you're able to see and communicate things that those who have never experienced it cannot. In a way, Burroughs journeyed to the land of the living dead and brought back a perspective entirely his own. But of course, the price is never worth it. I mean, obviously. And I'm not an advocate for it, not in the slightest. Yeah, it's like going to war in some ways, but it's a war you've brought upon yourself. Burroughs observes. He describes the vampiric solipsism of the junkie. A heroin user seems to undergo a metamorphosis. Like an insect, except an insect often becomes more beautiful. Burroughs writes about insects throughout the book. At one point, Burroughs worked as an exterminator. Apparently, he loved the job. I think I got that from that documentary. With heroin, it's a reverse chrysalis. Users seal themselves up in a solipsistic artificial womb, and instead of evolving and emerging as a beautiful butterfly, they devolve and emerge as a junkie. A fundamental human component dies, and according to Burroughs, they subsist on very little. The need for humans replaced by the need for opium. It's an alternate universe defined by pain and chemical need. There's a chapter in the book called The Algebra of Need. Burroughs captured the brutality of the cycle very well, especially in his article from the British Journal of Addiction, in his letter from a master addict to dangerous drugs that's included in this edition. Burroughs has the quality of a solemn, gaunt preacher, but when he opens his mouth or you open his book, you realize he is, but instead of the gospel of Christ, he preaches the gospel of junk. He seems to suggest that every opiate addict is living in their own sci-fi horror novel. That's their reality, right? In part, the book is a criticism of America's preposterous pretension and arrogance. This is most comically rendered in the character Dr. Benway, this violently incompetent doctor who thinks he knows exactly what he's doing all the time, thinking that he's an educated man. Very much like an extreme version of the straight man Abbott from Abbott and Costello, but if he were a doctor. The result is hysterical, but it's also a real criticism. Burroughs went to Harvard. In part, the book is a reaction to the archetype of the Ivy League educated man, saying, "I know what's what," with Burroughs' reply being something akin to, "The fuck you do." So with the themes of state control and subjugation and the various warring factions, it seems that Burroughs wrote this book in part as a scalding attack on the forces that condition and shape us, under the umbrellas of God, government, and polite society. Most people don't think. They just parrot what feels right and go with that, calling it thought. Because actual thought requires too much time and mental resources. I'm guilty of this. I still do it. We all do. It's how this world gets anything done at all. But parroting isn't thinking. There are no substitutes and shortcuts. Just as Burroughs informs us there are no shortcuts for getting off smack. Again, in that article from the British Journal of Addiction I mentioned. But we treat ideas the same way we order food. Get an inclination, idea served up to you, mass manufacture, grilled to perfection, and by its very nature, dead on arrival. There's your naked lunch, right? So I think that's what he's Thrown out there. Burroughs' innovative use of language in this novel was highly influential. The book went on to inspire hordes of authors, American and otherwise, some of them being Thomas Pynchon, J.G. Ballard, and William Gibson. For example, you can directly spot the influence of Burroughs on William Gibson with the line in Naked Lunch that reads, "Into the interior, a vast subdivision, antennae of television to the meaningless sky." The very first line of William Gibson's Neuromancer is an homage, and that line is, "The sky above the port was the color of television, tuned to a dead channel." I would argue that Naked Lunch is one of the best American novels ever written. Definitely. Better than Food. 5 out of 5 coffees. It's an incredible book, but it is not, you've been warned. So what did I dislike? Well, in a way it felt sloppy and slapdash. It sometimes felt like a rushed job, and it can feel exhausting after a while. So much madness and no ability for the reader to orient themselves. But those same elements also give it a kind of urgent energy that drives the thing forward. Like it's always teetering, like it's about to collapse in and on itself, right? It's always about to explode and just everything's about to go up in flames. The editor's note by Miles and Grauerholtz provides information about the tight deadline Burroughs had with Olympia Press, so I figured this was the reason why I felt the way I did. I think Burroughs actually could have done better, but the fact that the book is so good as it is speaks volumes, It has a kind of similar spirit to Kerouac's On the Road in its energy, right, in its momentum. But in its execution, it's wildly different. Burroughs went to places that Kerouac would never dare. You can imitate Burroughs, as many have, but you can't replicate him. That's a pun if you read the book. Don't sick those divisionists on me. Scram! Burroughs gives a critique of politics in his descriptions of the various political parties fighting for control over Intrazone. There's 4 of them. The first are the liquefactionists, which try to assimilate all party members, absorb them, literally it seems. Then there's the divisionists who try and replicate each other ad infinitum. Then there's the senders who try and control others via telepathy. And then finally there are the factualists who are against the other 3 parties. William Lee is a factualist. And with this, Burroughs seems to be telling us, everybody has an agenda. Fuck 'em all. Be on the side that resists all sides. Don't be absorbed. Don't become a duplicate. And for God's sakes, don't tell other people how to think and behave, as he feels that the senders are the worst. So, I find that relevant. When I went to North Africa, I took a ferry from Algeciras to Tangiers, and from there I took a long train to Marrakesh, and then from Marrakesh I went out for a couple days in the desert on the border of Algiers, and I spent a night in a Berber tent in the Sahara, which was beautiful, and I was wearing this linen suit I got from H&M, and it's all like white, and I was just sleeping in it in this tent. I had a dream that night about, well, it was a fragmented dream, but there were 2 parts I remember. The first part was William Burroughs was in it, and he was sitting all alone at like a cafe table or something, looking very solemn, very kind of sad. And the other part of the dream was very violent. It was very intense. And it was in a hospital, and it was a surgery, like an amputation or something. And there was a young man who was screaming. He let out this very long scream, which I could feel in my entire body was actually like this huge cathartic release of energy, where I actually physically felt in my sleep like this kind of like, when he was screaming, but his scream was epic, this roar of a scream. And that was it. But there was a scene in this book that conjured up that memory of that dream. There's a line on 79 in this edition. A train roars through him, whistle blowing. Boat whistle, foghorn, skyrockets burst over oily lagoons. Penny arcades open into a maze of dirty pictures. Ceremonial cannon boom in the harbor. A scream shoots down a white hospital corridor. Out along a wide dusty street between palm trees. Whistles out across the desert like a bullet. Vulture wings husk in the dry air. I don't know what that is. Because, it was years after I'd read Naked Lunch and I didn't remember any of it, but maybe some part of me did. I don't know. Or I was just in a space. My brother theorizes that I was kind of just in an environment tapping into something. I don't know what it was, but it was intense. And I also have to read to you one of the scenes featuring Dr. Benway. How could I not? I can't help but doing the Burroughs accent when I'm reading this. I hear the whole book in his voice. Dr. Benway is operating in an auditorium filled with students. Now, boys, you won't see this operation performed very often, and there's a reason for that. You see, it has absolutely no medical value. No one knows what the purpose of it originally was, or if it had a purpose at all. Personally, I think it was a pure artistic creation from the beginning. Just as a bullfighter with his skill and knowledge extricates himself from danger he has himself invoked, so in this operation the surgeon deliberately endangers his patient, and then, with incredible speed and celerity, rescues him from death at the last possible split second. Did any of you ever see Dr. Tetrazzini perform? I say perform advisedly because his operations were performances. He would start by throwing a scalpel across the room into the patient and then make his entrance like a ballet dancer. His speed was incredible. I don't give them time to die, he would say. Tumors put him in a frenzy of rage. Fucking undisciplined cells, he would snarl, advancing on the tumor like a knife fighter. A young man leaps down into the operating theater and, whipping out a scalpel, advances on the patient. Dr. Benway. An espontáneo! Stop him before he guts my patient! Espontáneo is a bullfighting term for a member of the audience who leaps down into the ring, pulls out a concealed cape, and attempts a few passes with the bull before he is dragged out of the ring. The orderlies scuffle with the espontáneo, who is finally ejected from the hall. The anesthetist takes advantage of the confusion to pry a large gold filling from the patient's mouth. It's kind of brilliant. It's an odious opium odyssey. Emphasis on odd. Coffee time. For those of you who are new, thank you very much for stopping by and watching the show. I take the names of all the patrons on Patreon who are financially supporting the show, I place their names in this mason jar, and for every review, I pull out a name. And whoever's name I pull out, I send a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. Trust me, I'm a total snob. Currently it's from Brazil. If you would like to get in on that and help support the show, thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate it. You can click on the link below, or go to patreon.com/books are better than food, and the tiers start at $5 per video. I make about 3 to 4 videos a month on average. Please don't forget to set a monthly limit if you're on a budget. Though if you do set a monthly limit, please allow for at least 3 monthly charges in order to get the video call perk. That's for the $10 per video plus tiers. Thanks. In addition, for becoming a paid patron, you'll get access to all this cool stuff. And international shipping is included. However, unfortunately, I can't send the coffee to the UAE or Qatar. Thank you so much to all my patrons for helping me keep this project going. It truly means a lot, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. Andrea F. Thank you very much, Andrea. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly, and I hope you love both. Cheers. Please subscribe if you have not already, and hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and click the notifications bell so I get algorithmic attention, whatever that thing is. And always remember, die reading. All right. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.